Could you survive the Ice Age? Not a cold snap, not one bad winter, a whole world locked in ice for 1,000 generations. Picture a wall of glacier a mile high, grinding slowly south across half of the planet. Winters so violent that bare skin can freeze solid in a matter of minutes. And now picture the creature that walked out into that frozen world and somehow lived. It was not a mammoth or a cave bear or anything built for the cold at all. It was a soft, skinny, tropical ape with no fur, no claws, and no business being there. It was you. And how you survived is the single most important trick our species ever learned. First, understand just how badly your body is actually made for this. You are, at heart, a creature of the African sun. Your ancestors evolved for heat, for sweating, for shedding warmth, for long days under a blazing sky. You have no thick fur, no layer of blubber, no natural coat of any kind at all. Strip away your clothes, drop you on that frozen steppe, and you are one of the most helpless animals alive. A reindeer shrugs off the cold. A mammoth wears a thick coat of wool and fat right down to the ground. You would be shivering, blue, and quietly failing within the hour. So how did this fragile tropical ape end up ruling an entire world of ice? Here is the part that should genuinely surprise you, because you were not even the toughest kind of human out there on that ice. Another kind of human was already living in the cold, and had been for a very long time. The Neanderthals, shorter, far stronger, barrel-chested, and genuinely built for the freeze. Their bodies held their heat far better than yours ever could. On paper, they should have won. And yet it was them who vanished, and you, the weaker, softer newcomer, who remained. The cold did not choose the strongest body. And that is the whole secret of the Ice Age. Because survival out here was never, ever going to be about your body at all. Your body was hopeless, and it stayed hopeless. You never grew fur, and you never grew fat. Instead, you did something that no animal had ever truly done before. You stopped trying to change yourself to fit the world, and you started changing the world to fit you. You became the first creature to survive not by evolving, but by inventing. And the very first thing you invented was a brand new skin. Cold. To beat it, you first have to respect exactly how fast it can kill. In a hard Ice Age wind, bare exposed skin can begin to freeze in 15 minutes, or even less. Your fingers, your nose, your ears, the first to go, whitening and hardening as they die. And deeper down, a slower, colder clock is ticking on the very core of your body. Let your core fall just a few degrees, from 37 toward 35, and hypothermia sets in. You stop shivering. You grow confused. You begin to feel, strangely, almost warm. And then, quietly, somewhere in the snow, you simply stop. Against all of that, a bare tropical ape has no chance at all. So you built yourself one. You took the animals that were made for the cold, and you took their warmth for your own. You skinned the reindeer and the fox and the hare, and you wore them. But a rawhide simply draped over your shoulders is not enough to survive a true Ice Age winter. The wind finds every gap. The cold pours in at every loose and open edge. What you truly needed was clothing that actually fit, sealed and layered and shaped to your body. And to make that, you invented one of the most important tools in all of human history. A needle, a tiny sliver of bone with a single small hole drilled carefully through one end. It sounds almost laughably simple, and it quietly changed absolutely everything. With that eye to carry a thread of animal sinew, you could now sew. You could stitch tight seams, join fitted layers, and build snug boots and hoods and gloves. For the first time ever, a naked ape could wrap itself in warm, sealed, engineered skin. You did not grow a coat to survive the ice. You manufactured one, stitch by careful stitch. And a warm body was only the very beginning of what you were about to build. Because clothing only keeps your own heat in. But out here, you would need to make heat too. And so you carried with you the single most powerful force your species had ever tamed. Fire. A campfire on the frozen steppe is not a comfort. It is the line between the living and the dead. It thaws your frozen food, dries your soaking furs, hardens your spears, and holds back the endless dark. Around that one flame, the killing cold of the night is pushed back just far enough to live. But a fire needs shelter, or the wind simply tears it away. And here you faced a new problem. On the open mammoth steppe, there were almost no caves, and there were no trees at all for timber. So you looked at the giants dying on the plains around you, and you saw a building material. You built your house out of the mammoths themselves. In what is now Ukraine, archaeologists have found the proof of it still standing. Round huts, their walls raised from the huge bones and curving tusks of dozens of mammoths. A single shelter, framed from the remains of an entire herd, carefully stacked and interlocked. Draped over with hides and warmed by a hearth, they were homes built to outlast the cruelest months. And some of these houses of bone were lived in and rebuilt across whole centuries. This was no desperate animal den. This was architecture on a plain where nothing else could stand. Then you solved the last great threat, the long dead months when nothing grows and nothing can be hunted. And you did it by turning the enemy itself into a tool. You used the frozen ground as a freezer. You buried your kills deep in the permafrost, and the endless cold kept the meat from ever spoiling. The very thing that was trying so hard to kill you became the larder that kept you alive. Fitted clothes, carried fire, a house of bone, a frozen store of food buried in the ice. Piece by careful piece, a helpless tropical ape had engineered a fortress against a frozen world. And yet none of it, not one single piece of it, could ever have saved you alone. Because the deepest secret of the whole Ice Age was never a tool at all. It was other people. Look again at everything you just built and ask yourself one very simple question. Who taught you? You did not invent that needle. You did not first discover fire or design that house of bone. Every one of those small miracles was handed to you by the people who came long before. A single human, dropped entirely alone onto that ice, knows almost none of it and dies within days. But a human inside a group inherits 1,000 generations of hard-won, life-saving knowledge. How to sew a seam, how to knap a blade, how to read the sky and the herd in the moving ice. That shared knowledge was the true coat that kept your entire species warm. And the group did far more than simply remember. It divided up the terrible work of staying alive. Some hunted the great herds. Some sewed the clothing. Some tended the fire and minded the young. No single person could ever do it all. But together, a band could do very nearly everything. A lone hunter who broke his leg out on the ice was, very simply, already a dead man. But a hunter with a whole band around him was carried and fed and given the time to heal. This is exactly why you survived, and the stronger, lonelier kind of human did not. Not because your body was any better, it was worse, but your groups were bigger and better connected. You traded, and you talked, and you shared your tools and ideas across vast distances of ice. You painted the walls of your caves, and you passed your hard-won stories down the generations. You were never really a stronger animal. You were something far more dangerous, a stronger network. And that network is the only reason a tropical ape ever walked out of the Ice Age at all. The lone survivor, tough and self-reliant, is the very oldest myth our species tells itself. Out here, on the real ice, that person freezes in the dark, entirely alone, and is soon forgotten. The ones who truly lived were the ones who belonged to something far larger than themselves, who shared the fire, who shared the knowledge, who faced the endless winter together. Because in the Ice Age, being alone was not a hardship to endure. It was a death sentence. So, could you survive the Ice Age? Be honest about what that frozen world would genuinely demand of you. Not muscle, not raw toughness. The mammoth had far more of both, and the mammoth is long gone. You would need clothing you actually knew how to build, seam by fitted seam. You would need fire you could carry and coax and keep alive all through the dark. You would need shelter you could raise where no cave and no forest had ever stood. And above all, you would need the 1,000 years of knowledge that no single mind can ever hold. Take all of that away. Drop one modern, clever, lonely person onto the open ice. And the answer is simple. No, that version of you does not last a single week out there. Not because you are not clever, but because one clever mind, entirely alone, is almost nothing. The cold does not care in the slightest how high your opinion of yourself may be. The frozen steppe does not care that you, personally, could never sew a boot or knap a blade. The people who crossed the Ice Age were not the strongest, and they were not the lone geniuses. They were the connected, the ones who inherited and shared and never once stood truly alone. The ice did not take the weak. It took the isolated and the disconnected and the proud. And the ones that it spared went on to inherit the entire earth. So here is the truth that 10,000 years of ice has quietly left to you. You are not descended from the strongest humans who ever lived. The strongest ones died out. You are descended from the cleverest, the most cooperative, and the most connected. From the ones who invented a skin and tamed a fire and built a house out of giants. From the ones who understood, deep in their bones, that no one survives the cold alone. Everything that you are was forged in that frozen world, by people leaning on each other to live. The warm coat on your back is the distant grandchild of that first small needle of bone. The warm room around you is the distant grandchild of that first hut of mammoth bone. And the simple habit of facing hard things together is the oldest inheritance you will ever own. The Ice Age was never really a test of who was toughest, or who was strongest, or who was fiercest. It was a test of who could invent, and who could share, and who could stay together. And your entire species passed that test, huddled around a single fire against a whole world of ice. So the next time the cold truly bites, remember what you really are, the ape that survived the ice, together.